Good morning, scholars. Today we are going to learn about forces and magnetism, Week 7. Today we have been learning about magnetism and electricity. We've learned about how magnets work, how we use magnets in our lives, and how magnetism and electricity are related. This week, we will be learning how electromagnetic noise created by humans can affect birds. Birds and migration. Did you know that many birds and other animals migrate or move their homes according to the season? So let's watch a video about how and why some animals migrate.
Whoa. Come out of there, you coward. Dear Tim and Moby, why do animals migrate? From Hubert. Migration is the instinctive movement of a group of animals. Animals usually migrate for any of three reasons: to find more food, to reach a better climate, or to ensure reproduction. Most migrations are seasonal, meaning they happen every year at certain times. The journeys animals take can be extremely long. Some birds fly thousands of kilometers on their migrations non-stop. Yeah, and they do it every year of their lives. It makes sense. Seasonal changes can have huge effects on animals. Shifts in weather can affect food supplies and make it tougher for newborn animals to survive. Yeah, you could say that migration is a way for animals to keep their environment stable and friendly. Migrations aren't always controlled by the seasons, though. Some animals migrate on a nomadic or unpredictable schedule. Elephants in Mali, Africa can hear rainstorms from very far away and travel quickly to meet them. And some animals, like locusts, follow one-way or removal migrations. They move from place to place until the food supply runs out, rarely hitting the same place twice. Animals use all kinds of guides to know how to get where they're going: wind patterns, currents in the water, and even geographic landmarks. Some use more specialized methods. Certain migratory birds have tiny particles of the magnetic material magnetite in their brains. It's thought that these particles allow the birds to use Earth's magnetic field to find their way. And animals are amazingly sensitive to changes in season. They have internal clocks that let them know what time of year it is. No, it's not an actual clock. But the amount of sunlight, the temperature, and their own internal chemistry can give animals a good idea of when to start moving. By the way, humans have a history of migration too. It's thought that our species originated in Africa, then migrated over thousands of years to populate the rest of the planet. Speaking of which, we better migrate back home. I have to feed on some dinner.
First vocabulary word is detect. Detect is to discover or to find. Synonym: to find. They get some of that superb sense of direction from their ability to detect Earth's magnetic field. How do you detect when it's time to go to bed? I can detect that it's time to go to bed by... Our next vocabulary word is perturb. To cause great disturbance. Synonym: bother. But the energy coming from some electronic devices can perturb a bird's internal compass. What is something your family does that perturbs you? Something my family does that perturbs me is captive. One who is confined or held, such as a prisoner. Synonym: imprisoned. Even when held captive in a lab, birds know when it's time to migrate. When have you felt like a captive? I felt like a captive when... Migrate. Movement from one region to another, usually according to season. Synonym: journey. Even when held captive in a lab, birds know when it's time to migrate. If you could migrate to anywhere else in the world, where would you migrate and why? I would migrate to... because
Have you ever gone on a trip away from home? Maybe you travel in a car to see some family or took a plane to go somewhere fun on vacation. Well, did you know that a lot of animals take trips too? Many different kinds of animals move from one place to another, and when they do, we say they migrate. But not all kinds of trips that animals make are considered migration. When Squeaks moves from the lab to the kitchen, we don't call that migration. Sorry, Squeaks, but maybe we can call it snack time. Most of the time, migration means moving over a long distance, so animals can migrate to different parts of the country or even different parts of the world. Now, migrations also happen at a certain time. For example, you might have seen birds flying south for the winter. That's a kind of migration. But they're not just going on a trip for fun. Animals migrate for good reasons. Many birds migrate in the winter because the weather is just too cold for them, so they need to go someplace warmer. Other animals migrate long distances to look for food. And sometimes creatures migrate so that they can have babies in a place they know is safe. It doesn't matter if the animals move over land, through water, or in the air. If an animal moves a certain distance and does it at a certain time, it's a pretty good bet that they're migrating. So what are we waiting for? Let's take a look at some cool animal migrations. Let's meet the champion of migration on land, the caribou. Caribou live way up north in places like northern Canada and the state of Alaska. And one group of caribou, called a herd, moves around this area in a big loop, and they do it every year. For most of the winter, this herd of caribou lives here, right on the border between Canada and Alaska. Then in early spring, around April, the caribou go on the move. They travel about 600 kilometers north to an area near the ocean, and this place near the coast has lots of good food for the caribou to eat. So this is where the mother caribou have their babies. But it's not such a great place for long, and that's because by the middle of summer, the coast becomes home to big swarms of mosquitoes and other biting insects. So the herd goes on the move again, but this time they move away from the ocean. Then in the fall, when things start to get really cold, they move back down south where there's more food and the weather is less harsh. Finally, when spring arrives, they start all over again. And at the end of the year, some of these caribou have walked almost 5,000 kilometers. Whew. Now when it comes to migration in the sea, whales go farther than any other kind of animal. Lots of kinds of whales migrate, but the whale that migrates the farthest is this one, the humpback whale. Most kinds of humpbacks spend the summer in cool waters up north, near places like Alaska. All summer, they eat things like shrimp and small fish, building up the energy they'll need for the trip they're about to take. When the water starts to get too cool, the humpbacks swim south to warmer waters, near Hawaii and other tropical islands. There, the whales rest and have their babies, and they stay there until the babies are strong enough to swim back north. And it can be a long swim, too. The longest recorded swim for a humpback whale is over 15,000 kilometers. But one animal that's in the running for making the longest migration ever is the Arctic tern. This bird isn't very big. It's only about the size of the ruler you use at school, and some of the time it lives near the North Pole. When winter comes, though, it doesn't just go a little bit south. The Arctic tern flies over 35,000 kilometers to the very tip of South America. That's about as far south as you can go. It's not only one of the longest migrations by air, it's one of the longest migrations made by any animal. How do all these animals find their way? After all, they don't have maps or phones or computers like people do. Well, different animals have their own ways to keep them from getting lost. Some animals look to the sky and use the stars, moon, and sun to help them find their way. Others stay on the right path by watching the landscape and following features like mountains and rivers. Caribou, humpback whales, and Arctic terns are just some of the animals that make these amazing journeys. But fish, insects, and even jellyfish migrate too. That's something to think about the next time you're on a trip. Thanks for joining us on SciShow Kids. Do you have a question that you'd like us to answer? Ask a grown-up to help you leave a comment down below, or send us an email to kids@scishow.com. See you next time.
Alright, so now we're going to dive into Electronics May Confuse a Bird's Compass by Stephen Orns. As you read, I want you to think about the following question. How do electromagnetic noises affect the migratory patterns of birds? So let's go ahead and review some of our expectations for this week. We're in week 7, grade 3, unit 4. Of course, you can look on this page to find our vocabulary words, our text focusing question for the week. How do electromagnetic noises affect the migratory patterns of birds? And our vocabulary. You need to put down the word, The synonym. A synonym is a word that means the same as our vocabulary word, so magnetism means the same or similar to the word attraction. Sentence. We're going to use the word magnetism in a sentence. Magnets use a force called magnetism. And lastly, you're going to draw a picture. You're going to do this for all of our vocabulary words: detect, perturb, captive, migrate. We're going to read our text, and then we're going to start looking at our day 2 activity. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!